Okay, good morning everyone, and welcome to another Connecting Scotland webinar. Today we are joined by Rob from Get Safe Online, and Rob's going to be covering socialising safely online for us today. So we will have questions and answers at the end, and I know Rob's got a bit of interactive activity as well for us today, with some polling. So with no further ado, I'm just going to hand it over to Rob, and he can kick the session off.
Morning, everybody. Hi, Rob Halfman from Get Safe Online. It's a pleasure to be here today and talk to you about being safe online and socialising safely online, which we're all doing a lot more of these days, unfortunately. I'm sure we'd all like to be more out and about. But having said that, obviously Zoom chats like this have kind of come into their own of late and really saved the day to some extent, being able to see friends and family online whilst we're all in lockdown. So socialising online is a benefit to us, and we mustn't forget that. And it really does help us communicate with people all over the world. So it is a really great thing. What I'm going to talk about today is just how to protect yourself and make sure that you look after each other and look after yourselves whilst online, and that's really important to do. So I'm going to share my screen initially, which will just be a few PowerPoints here and there. So like I said, it's protecting what matters. This has been the theme over the last few weeks, really. It really is important that you make sure that you keep the horse in the stable, for want of a better phrase, but make sure that you look after your personal data. As soon as it's gone, it's gone. Someone used to use a phrase, what goes online stays online, and that's pretty true. So let me move along. So what we're going to do today, what we're going to talk about, well, I'll give a brief introduction for those that weren't on any of the previous sessions, just about who I am and also my experience in this particular sort of field, really. We'll have a look at chat rooms. What are the risks of going on chat rooms, and what can you do to look after yourself in such environments? Online dating, massive growth in online dating. Used to be a bit of a stigma, really, if you used to date online, but now it's the go-to place if you're looking for love. So this would seem to be a really apt thing to talk about. Webcam Blackmail. Now this is a real problem. I found an article actually that was posted in the Edinburgh Reporter only a few weeks ago in relation to this particular matter, so we'll talk through that. Stalking and bullying as well, and where you can get some advice, and also what to do if you're suffering from that, and what precautions you need to take to avoid it. So just a bit about me. So like I said, Rob Halfman, I've been 32 years in law enforcement. So that was from frontline policing to CID when I moved into the burglary team and criminal investigations 25 years ago now, considerable amount of time. And then the last 10 in investigating fraud, financial crime and cybercrime. Now within that field, we did have a number of cases relating to online dating, and there were significant losses incurred, and not only loss financially, but really traumatic emotional stories.
Emotionally.
So that it's quite an impactful crime, and something that we'll have a look at in a bit more detail. So following my sort of law enforcement career, joined Get Safe Online to enable me to do things like this, really, and pass on some of my knowledge and expertise to yourselves so that you can spread the messages to wider communities. Like I said previously, well, I'm still not snowboarding. The weather hasn't got there just yet. I'm a guitarist in a band, but I'm not playing live music just yet. So I'm still going out on my bike, but that's all looking a bit too wet at the moment. So let's just go on to the next thing, which is I want Aaron to just pull up a bit of a poll that I want you to get involved with. So this is just a few questions, just so we can see how many people have actually engaged in those things that I've been talking about. So here's a few questions that I'd just like you to answer honestly. Have you ever been in a chat room? Was your experience good or bad? Have you used an online dating app? Was your experience good or bad, or indifferent? And do you know what trolling is? And has anyone ever been abusive to you online? So if you just take some time just to click through those answers, and we'll see what people's responses are, so we can just then have a look at the results as to our activity online. Because it's, like I've said, we may well have found ourselves going into places online that we might have done before lockdown, and certainly there's a lot more people that are going into various areas that they wouldn't normally have done. And so it's just be interesting to see how you have experienced online chats. Like I say, it's all private information really, and we won't go into who's done what and go into any more detail. It's just a guide to see who has been where and doing what, and what experiences people have had, because it's quite interesting to see whether actually what happens online. We hear lots of bad stories about dangers online, but really it can be a really good experience, and I think the majority of us can sometimes forget that when we go online, and we just all focus on the bad stuff. And I don't know. We've got 11.
I think that's us.
Are we done?
Looks like it.
Okay, that's fine. So here we go. These are the results. So a few of us have been on a chat room. Many of you haven't. Those that went on there, well, says that it was a good experience. That's reassuring. But others, a bit indifferent. Have you used a dating app? 2 people have. 9 people haven't. Experience on those, well, the 2 people who went on it said that it was good, so that's good. We've all heard of what trolling, or most people have heard about what trolling is and know what it is, so we can go into a bit more detail on that. And has anyone ever been abusive to you online? Well, there's a bit of a 50-50 split on that. So quite clearly, just from that initial interaction there, we can see that we've had good experiences. So that's always reassuring. And it's also clear but disappointing to see that people have been abusive to each other, which is easy to do online. And the reason why that is because it's anonymous. So I'll just close that poll there. So yeah, so just on that basis there, it's quite clear that the reason why there are dangers out there is because, like I've said, there are sheep in wolves in sheep's clothing. I think that's the phrase, isn't it? No criminal will ever just basically show themselves up online as being a criminal. So the opportunity that the internet provides is that anonymity, and criminals really do exploit that. And it also enables people to be very abusive online without any particular comeback themselves. So I just want to go on to the next element in relation to our interaction again online. So we were talking about the our communication and our chats and the way that we interact with people. So here we've got millions and millions of different bits of activity occurring on the internet every minute. So for instance, we talked about internet dating, 1.6 million swipes on Tinder. We've got 59 million messages. We've got 2.5 million Snapchats created. 1.3 million people logged in on Facebook per minute. People tweeting. So all of this activity does enable a criminal mind, or does enable people who want to be abusive or radical on the internet, really a lot of opportunity to do so. And also with that vast amount of people, you can quite clearly see where the anonymity comes in. So what are the risks in chat rooms? Well, people find them really engaging and entertaining places to be. So let's not forget that. But there will also be encounters. We've already seen, just from that very brief poll, 50% of us have experienced someone being online and being abusive to us. So in a chat room, you will encounter potentially violent or sexual or extremist content. There'll be maybe of offensive or hateful or racist in nature. That is a risk in there. Strangers, maybe cyber stalkers. Now, we've all heard of stalkers. Well, this internet interaction enables stalking to happen. And people can do that because they remain anonymous, and they can do it very, very targeted, or even very broadly. So they can really find out an awful lot of information about you if they really wanted to go online. But they can be threatening and harassing, and you don't want that to happen when you're trying to engage with people. They try to change your ideologies or even have sexual intentions. So just be wary. You know, people can become very friendly very quickly online. And I think one thing that the internet has taught us, or maybe it hasn't taught us yet, is the psychology around the internet use, and how humans very, very quickly think that they're talking to their friends, when really they're talking to strangers, and they let their guard down. And we'll see later on in this presentation how that can have a really detrimental effect. Because let's not forget, when you meet someone in person, I just stopped sharing the screen a second. When you meet someone in person, you make an immediate judgment about them. Instinctively, you're looking to see whether their demeanor is threatening, or whether it's calm, or whether they are showing signs that they're agitated or not, or just by their appearance. These are things that are instinctively inbuilt in us. And yet when we're on the internet, all those defenses that we have in our, sort of when we pick up visual pointers, they're gone on the internet. And so as a result, very quickly those defenses come down, and people engage far more openly, and are able to and really feel more comfortable in sharing what is actually sort of really sensitive or personal information. So that's a really key point, because that's what criminals do exploit. So back to the slide then. So yeah, young adults and children. We can be over the shoulder of our kids as often as we can, but they can be lured into inappropriate conversations. They will have technical capabilities beyond our reach, the majority of them. My niece was able to connect to the internet, or connect her phone to the internet. So connect her phone to the TV so she could watch Peppa Pig. And you know, she'd only seen how her parents had done that 2 or 3 times, and it was in. And before you know it, they're picking up things very, very quickly. So they might be lured into inappropriate conversations. Now, also, there is a trend called flaming. Now, this is where people deliberately use expressions and strong opinions and emotions just to get a spark going, just so that people start to get agitated and lose a bit of self-restraint, really. And finally, of course, being tricked by others into divulging personal financial information, either in a chat room or taking the chat offline, or out of that particular chat room, should I say, and going into another format of communication, which enables the criminal to be a little bit more targeted in what information they're able to elicit. So that is a very, very common way of getting people to divulge personal information, just taking them to one side off the chat room. Let's talk privately. We've got a really, really good communication going here. I think we're really in common. We've got a lot of things in common. Let's talk privately about stuff. And before you know it, they're talking very openly about personal and financial information. So be careful about that. So, chat rooms, chat safely. Like I've said, be careful who you trust online. Online friends are really strangers, never forget that. They might seem to be open and personal themselves, but it could be absolute load of nonsense that they're talking about just to make you feel comfortable, so you open up. So it's really, really careful that you keep your personal information secret, even if they're trying to ask for it. This has been a common theme that when I've been dealing with people who've been lured into divulging their personal details online, or even going further and financial details, or helping someone out financially. It really is about that lowering the level of trust. So remember, you can always log out, you can always step back, you can always block people. If you find some content offensive, block them. I'm not interested in you, go away. Or simply do not engage with them. Step back, think this is not for me, I'm not comfortable here, and leave, because you can. You're in charge, remember. So always think before you answer private messages. Like I've said, you don't know who you're talking to, and you don't really know who these people are or what their motives are. Very important as well that if you go in chat rooms, don't use your real name, because quite clearly you might have other accounts that are using your real name, your Facebook account, your Twitter, whatever it might be that you do have as your real name. That could then be sought out and found, and further personal information obtained about you that could be then used to intimidate you or threaten you, or in fact make you feel really uncomfortable, and that stalking that we were talking about. Report people who are breaking the rules. Really important, because if they're doing it to you, they'll do it to somebody else. So it's really important that you do report it through the chat room provider. Save a copy of the chat logs as well, and make sure that you do take the power into your hands. Remember, you're in charge. And I think that's a really important point there to focus on. Never forget that you are the one in charge of what you do. Don't get drawn in. They will try and manipulate you so that you react in a particular way, or that you provide some information in a particular way, because they've gained your trust. You've lowered your guard down. So like I've said, these environments are good environments, but there's always a risk. And if you manage those risks, then you'll be safe. And that's the main thing, that the main messages that I want to get across in respect of this particular session in socializing online. Remember, if you were socializing out and about, you wouldn't go about giving personal information to others. You just would be far more guarded. And yet, when we're online, for some reason, we're able just to fly all this information out without even really giving it a second thought. So just think about, when you're online, what would this interaction be like if it was actually in person? So let me just take you to the next slide now. I've also got a couple of videos here that I want to share with you. Let me just get onto the right place. So, online dating. Well, there is, just to name but a few. Quite clearly, there are vast amounts of ways to date online. Some of you have done it. Good experience. great. I know friends of mine who've done it. Their experiences have been great. But I also know through my policing experience, because that's who people come to, that online dating has had a significant impact on people's lives. And like I said, because they let their guard down, or because they felt they could trust the other person, quite simply just through the communication online. So the next video is a victim of crime who got involved through an online dating app with a particular individual who she came to trust. So I just want you to watch this and see if you can pick out some of the warning signs, some of the really things that from an outside view looking in, you go, what? Hang on, really? Are you paying that amount of money to someone you've never met? And people really can't get that into their heads. And I want to explain some of the psychology about that, because it's really important to know that so that you can protect yourself and others and you don't fall into the same trap. So we'll just play this video. It's a few minutes long, but I think it's worthwhile watching because it does give some key information. Now, let's make sure I fell foul of this last time because I didn't click on the right button. We all fall foul of it, Aaron, every now and again.
We do.
Just these little tricks here. Right, here we go.
I'd been on the internet dating site for a couple of years, really. Thought I knew my way around. And then one day, this particular email arrived with a very, very handsome gentleman attached to the email, and he was showing signs of interest in me. He was living in America, but he was in the army, high ranking, according to his photograph and the profile. And I was, very, very attracted to this man. So I replied. I must admit, the part of me didn't believe it. I thought, why would somebody like this be interested in little old me, that sort of thing. So yes, I replied, and he got back to me, and it just started from there, really. I was just swept off my feet. Really, really swept off my feet. He was this tall, very handsome, eloquent man. Yes, just a couple a day initially, and then they became more frequent. But then there might be a gap of a week or so where there was nothing, and I think, oh, he's lost interest. So that when the next one came, oh no, he's not. He's still there. He still wants to, to correspond. It went on, I suppose, for about 3 weeks. Quite a lot of emails. We got around to the possibility of his visiting, and but he said he got a cash flow problem. Would I send him, or could I send him some money? I remember then that I told him I'd been an occupational therapist all my life, and my husband, I'm a widow, had left me very comfortably off. So I had felt, at ease with him enough to discuss this sort of thing. So £1,000, it was worth it. And then, really, really excited. I was going to go up to London to meet him. This is all in a few weeks' time. And then I got an email saying he wouldn't be coming. He couldn't get leave or something, but that he should be able to make it in another month or whatever. So I thought, well, that's okay. We carried on emailing. I was really, really disappointed that he wasn't coming, but he was still interested, and that's all that mattered to me. He still wanted to meet me. That's what he kept saying in all his emails, how much he was looking forward to meeting me and spending time with me and perhaps building a new life together. A month went by, and he said he was able to come again. This time he'd be here. And I said, well, you know, obviously you've got the money. And he said, no, he'd bought the tickets, but they were now out of date. And he'd still got this problem, cash flow problem. So could I send him some more? He assured me that, you know, he'd pay me back. And I never doubted it, really. And then in one of the emails, when he was talking about coming to London, apparently he's got a property in the States, which he is in the process of selling. And this is where some of the cash flow problem is, that the money isn't being released. So he was coming over to London to get that sorted out, to get his finances sorted out. But he didn't have the wherewithal to actually come. So he needs cash for the property business in the States. So he actually asked me if I could send him £10,000. Well, I just said, you know, I'm really getting suspicious now. You know, I do have money, quite a bit, but you know, after all, I'd never met him. So I was reluctant and didn't answer his emails for a couple of days, and then he emailed back and said all the right things, I suppose. Sucked me right in again. So I sent it to him. I sent him £10,000. And he said he was always going to pay it back. You know, there was never any doubt about that. And I believed him. You know, I believed him. He then said he'd got another date for travelling. So, because his finances still weren't sorted, if I could just see my way to another £2,000, so I did. Another 2,000. I think the total was about £20,000. I can't believe it. I really, really can't believe how stupid I was. Some would say a stupid old woman. And I'm not that, you see. Not really. Well, maybe I am, but this time I certainly was. I was lonely. I was, yes, like so many people, not just women, men as well, looking for somebody special, looking for someone to love, and just being completely gullible. So gullible.
So that lady there is typical of a number of people who I've had to deal with in respect of their online relationships, and it really does hit home the emotional impact of online dating fraud. So not only does the victim lose their money, but all of the emotional investment that they've put in to that relationship is also lost. So it's not simply the fact that you lose significant amounts of money, and people who have not only had money to lose, but there are people who are victims and have had no money because they've taken out loans or remortgaged their house and provided the money that way. So not only do they then increase their debt or their loss, but the emotional impact is that they have lost someone that they thought they loved as well. So there is two parts to this particular crime that has a significant impact on people's welfare and mental well-being. You could see the impact on that lady, that she was almost still talking that that this guy still exists. He's got a property business. He's got this, he's got that. He'll pay me back. So there is an element of denial, because as soon as you realize, or you actually start to think that it's a fraud, then the relationship and the person who you've built up as in your own mind as existing, and you emotionally invested in that person, you then are making the realization that they don't exist, and then you suffer grief. And no one wants to suffer grief. So if you can avoid suffering grief, then you will continue with the fantasy. And this is why and how a criminal in respect of romance fraud is so successful. Because once the victim is engaged in that fantasy, which is what it is, none of that existed. He was not in the army, he wasn't American, he got no properties, he wasn't traveling. But they were believing that themselves, that they could have a new life, that this person cared for them. So I'll just go through some of those key phrases that she used and just show you really that, you know, we're all susceptible to this kind of fantasy, and that we all jump in with both feet. I used an example on one of the previous sessions, it was about the lottery. Well, the lottery, I'm still paying my £2 on the basis that I think, well, I might win a million quid, and basically all of my colleagues are in the same pot, and I don't want them to win and me not win. I couldn't imagine that. So suddenly you can see where the similarities occur. So in this instance, an absolutely tragic story for that lady. And it's quite clear as well that she was well educated, but she described herself as gullible. The amount of people that I've seen who suffered that guilt and have lost their life savings or remortgaged their house and feel that it's all their fault when it's not. They're a victim of a crime. So we'll just go back to the slides. And so warning signs then. Well, here, these are phrases that she used. Part of me didn't believe it. That is the instinct that I talked about. And if you get that feeling, trust it. Very attracted, very, very handsome man, American Army, high ranking, excited, swept off her feet. So all of the things that she was after, she was lonely and looking for someone to love. She was engaged in that fantasy from that point on. Then the criminal then brings in the cash flow, gets some money, realizes that this victim will pay. So they drag it on. The lady's disappointed. He starts talking about building a new life, can't wait for it again, and gets her back on board, needs more money for business. And here we have it again. Was getting suspicious, so I didn't answer his emails. That is the warning sign. And so that is when really you should try and withdraw. But it's so hard. Like I've said, so much emotional investment has been made, not only the finance, but emotional belief in that this is going to be good for you or for her, when unfortunately it wasn't the case. So this is a quick video about the same elements, but just brief, how to avoid it.
Online dating is one of the most popular ways to meet someone nowadays. That's not surprising. It's a great way to find someone new. Who wouldn't like a person who looks good, is successful, seems lots of fun, and is really interested in you? They shower you with compliments and are very fast to show their affection. And quite quickly, they suggest you use alternative contact methods. So you can chat outside the dating service you're using, claiming it's easier that way. Usually, you'd set up a place to meet in public and see if there's chemistry. But sometimes, the person on the other end starts to make excuses. It's hard to meet because they're abroad and they need money for a ticket to fly over. Or there's a debt they must pay off and they just need a small amount of cash to sort something out. So they ask you for money. You trust them. You've been chatting for weeks, months, even longer. The problem is, not everyone's looking for love. Fraudsters set up fake profiles. The pictures aren't them, and their life stories aren't real. And they're doing the same thing to many people at the same time. What they're doing is evading scrutiny. They want you to go off-site, because if someone else reports them and their profile gets taken down, they can still make contact with you, and you'll be none the wiser. They just want your money, not your love. And if you don't have any money, they may ask you to get a loan or to use your bank account. So, stay in contact on the dating website for a while. Check the stories people tell you by doing a few simple internet searches. You can do that for their pictures and profiles too. And talk to your family and friends about it. They could help you see through a possible scam. Never give money to someone you haven't met in person, however heartfelt their story sounds. Have fun, find romance, but stay safe.
And this is just a local example.
They're horrible individuals as well, they're despicable individuals who are effectively targeting, in some cases, vulnerable people to take their money. A predator always knows its prey. It doesn't prey on the strongest in the group. It will always prey on the most vulnerable in the group because that's easy pickings, if you like. Do they care? No, they don't. The only thing that they care about, and I think it's relevant in romance fraud, they're not caring about you as an individual, they're caring about how much money you can give them.
So, connecting with new people online. Take your time. You're in charge, remember. Be responsible. So do your research. You know, the Google image search allows you to save an image, or Google reverse image search, so you can save an image and then you can put it into Google and it will search for that image. And that can identify those that have been cloned and have been used on multiple accounts, because it will show that that photo has been used multiple times. So that's a really useful way of checking the validity of someone's profile picture. Money requests are your red light. They, you know, as soon as someone starts to talk about travel, medical bills, housing fees, costs, veterinary bills, whatever it is, that is a red light, and you should start to talk to somebody else about it. And from an outside view looking in, might be able to just clear the clouds a little bit. Also, if you do have any interactions with people who are suspicious or there's unacceptable behavior, report it. It's really important, because those profiles can be taken down. And always think, well, what is the narrative? What really is the story here? Because there are so many similarities between a kind of story that is used by criminals. The American serviceman, high ranking abroad, is a key one. And like I said, it's really important. Don't let your desires or fantasy cloud your instincts. Your instincts are there for a reason, and they can protect you. And if that lady had suddenly gone with her instinct and thinking, I don't really believe it, or I'm starting to get suspicious, trust that instinct, because that is your opportunity to step away, speak to someone about it, and get a different opinion. And that different opinion might be, well, this is absurd, what are you doing? And suddenly the clouds start to clear. So it's really important that you do that. So all of these chat rooms, all of these dating apps are there to have fun. And they are, and many people do, as we've seen in this group, people have had good experiences on there. But just be very careful as to who you're interacting with and what they're requesting of you. So we'll just go through a few other parts of socializing online that I wanted to talk about. Making your profile, like I say, don't use a username that lets people know who you are. Don't be provocative or controversial, because you will get the wrong attention. Keep your details private, and if anyone started to pressure you, well, stop communicating with them. You know, you're in charge, don't forget. And if anyone starts to gain your trust, never share your password or security details with them. We've done that in the previous sessions. Keep that safe. Absolutely paramount importance. Here's the story I talked about regarding webcam blackmail. So this is a story where people are enticed to do sexual acts online that are then described as being recorded and are then going to be sold or shown to friends online. Then the person gets in touch and says, I've been video recording you, you need to send me money, or I'm going to publish your video. It's a crime, it's a blackmail, and someone is demanding money with menaces. That's a blackmail offence. And if that does occur, sometimes it occurs in as much as an email can be sent to say that I've got footage of you having put spy camware on your device. So I've seen you haven't necessarily done it in front of me, but I've clocked you doing it, and as a result I've recorded it. That might be an absolute lie, but suddenly people panic, and so they pay these individuals. The advice is to report it immediately to the police. How do you avoid that? Well, don't get lured into any compromising situations. Remember, what goes online stays online, like I've said. Be wary about who you invite, and also of the invitations that you accept, so that you're not just inviting randomers to get access to your accounts. We've talked about privacy settings as well. Keep them secure. That's vitally important, so that you do lock down your accounts so that people can't spy on you or get further information about you. And there's also a service that conceals both parties' true email addresses. I've been unable to find the name of that, unfortunately, but there is a service, having done some research, that enables that to happen. So we've talked about cyberbullying. When you used to think back when I was at school, which is a long time ago, I'd go to school and yet there'd be bullying. But I get bullied by, what, 5 or 10 kids at school? So suddenly the internet enabled bullying to take place on an international scale. And when people start to engage in a bullying phenomenon and picking on a particular individual, even though they've never met them, it can be devastating and have a really significant impact on their mental health. And the same for stalking as well. So both of those elements are vitally important to make sure that you protect yourself, and also, your kids and relatives. Look out for the signs, being withdrawn or being anxious or checking phone all the time, or it's a really emotionally impactful crime. And again, it is a crime because you don't want it. So to avoid it, don't reply, block it, talk about it, and report it. Cyber stalking is persistent unwanted contact. Again, really, if that starts to happen, disengage and seek advice and report it to the police. Stalking is again a really insidious crime, and makes people very, very unstable in relation to their mental health. So it's vitally important that you seek help if that starts to happen. But by taking the steps that we've talked about, then that can be prevented. But all of that activity there can occur on any of these platforms here. So do take care. And report behavior as well, bad behavior. It's important. If you see a post, or you get a direct threat, or you see something that's exploitation, it's vitally important that we all have a contribution to make to the standards of online activity. The platforms have become a lot better in taking down content. I've seen a few bits of content that I haven't been happy with, and I've reported it, and it's been taken down, and I've been notified that it's been taken down. So it's really important that we all contribute to that, and we all sort of take a stand on all of the harassment, hate, crime, or whatever the content might be. But it is our social responsibility. And we've got an awful lot of this flying around at the moment. What to trust, what not to trust. So we've got untrue stories which are intentionally published to influence your thoughts and decisions. Or we've got stories which are only partially true, reporting a factual event, but misreporting some of the circumstances around it. How can you tell? Wow, this is so hard, isn't it? But you can do some checks yourself. Look at the source. This was another, look who's publishing it. Has it come from more than one? Or is it just one source? Is it just a particular person online? Have a look at them. Are they real? I'd got a like on Instagram. Someone had liked something, and I was like, this looks an unusual like of my kind of page or whatever. Went in. That person has got no posts, no followers, and was following 17,000 people. So quite clearly, that was just a troll there, just to get further interactions. So you can do the research to check. Use fact checkers. Check images, like I've said, but also remember, use your instincts and think before you're out spreading news. There's been a lot about coronavirus and about vaccines, or about different types of medication, drinking goodness knows what, or having an injection of goodness knows what. So just be really careful about what you share or what you're actually influenced by. And I just want to reiterate these again. The current threats going around on Facebook, on emails, on Messenger, on texts, they're still out there. So really do look out for them and pass the messages on. That if you've got anything of a particular nature that you're suspicious of, report it, but ultimately come out and go into the genuine link on a particular website. So those are the resources where you can find more information. GetSafeOnline.org has a vast amount of information on there about socializing online and keeping yourself safe. Do visit that website. It has got an awful amount of information. And if you have a particular incident that you wish to report, then please report that to Police Scotland through that website, or also through their through 101. So that's been a whistle-stop tour through sort of online socializing and being safe. So remember, your instincts are there for a reason and are there to protect you. If it feels wrong, it probably is. Disengage and step away. If you see some content that you don't like, report it, and mainly have a good time online, but also be safe. Now, I hope you've found that useful, and if anyone's got any questions, then I'm more than willing to answer them for you, and hopefully you've enjoyed that particular session. So thank you.
Thank you, Rob. That was really interesting. I think probably my key takeaway from that is when things look too good to be true, chances are they probably are. I think similar to previous sessions, that's that whole thing about trusting your instincts, and just to take a second and pause and question. So it's really interesting. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask, either through the chat pane or if you want to bring yourself off mute and ask a question?
I think Heather's just put something on. Let me just have a read of it. I work with older people. How do I get this message across without scaring them or putting them off taking the plunge? Really good question, because we all want to make sure that we are able to engage and able to enjoy being online. So no, we don't want to scare people. And so, like I said at the start, I think it's really important to outline the benefits and create the way of delivering it is to say, being online is really good for you. One way of doing that is certainly in relation to the older generation is connecting with kids, grandkids, and just taking that step into an interaction with their grandkids or kids or family online is a really good way of introducing them to other environments. And so that's a first step. And then once that has been broached, then you can start to talk about other ways of interacting online. But again, always make sure that how they start to interact online is safe from the outset. So always think about what they will do in public. Now, the older generation would seem, from my experience, to be a more trusting generation, which is where the risk comes in. My mum has answered the phone believing that the person who she was talking to was a timeshare salesman that had contacted her from years ago, and so on and so forth. Oh, well, it's the gas board, or oh, I've had a phone call from the bank. It must be the bank because they've said that it's the bank. So I think the main way of getting the message across is to start it with a positive, and then link in some of the safety messaging that you want to get across, and then end with a positive, and then just drip feed it every time you start to see, if you're talking to groups more often than once, then you can start to just drop in a few more subtle hints about protection and being safe online. So no, it's not easy. Delivering safety messages always comes across as being potentially scaremongering, when we've seen through our poll that people have had good experiences. So always share the fact that there are so many benefits to being online, but the same principles would apply as to locking your house, locking your doors, locking your windows, making sure that your phone is safe in your bag, or the purse and your money is safe in the bag, and just reiterate the same kind of principles as being online. So Heather, I hope that helps.
It's helpful, Rob. Yeah, I think it's one of those things as digital champions. It's kind of how we digest these key messages from these webinars and from other resources, and how we use those messages with the people we're working with, and embed those key online safety messages in each kind of individual task or thing we're doing with people. So if it's socializing online, embed these key messages without frightening people. I always like to compare online safety to a kind of, I suppose, risk assessing safety in the real world, and just drawing comparisons of, there are risks in the real world and the physical world, just like there are online, and try and draw parallels between the two.
That's right. I think an important thing is also it's scary because it's globally connected immediately. So therefore, the risks could be exponentially apparent. From that first slide that I shared in relation to the amount of activity that happens online, people can get afraid by that. But you can put your presence within that in a very small part of it. So you don't have to be completely engaged with the internet and have an Instagram account, a Twitter account, a Zoom account, this, or a Duo account, that. Or you can almost for outline a particular starting point that's good, and lock that down. So if it's, for instance, it was Facebook, for instance, make sure that you take them to the settings first, rather than how to post their pictures of the grandkid's birthday online. So first things first, right, well, you wouldn't go and get in a car without learning how to drive it or protect yourself. So the same principles can be applied. What's happened with the internet is that it's just accelerated so fast that those precautions haven't been laid out for anybody. So there's no driving test to take to go onto the internet. You just get on there and be at anyone's mercy. So start off by going into privacy settings, going into security updates, and doing the simple things first, so that they understand about being safe from the word go, rather than trying to unravel it as they go along. So I hope that helps.
See, Tracy's popped a comment in to say when she chats to her older users, she usually compares online scammers to those over the phone or the door. Luckily, most are usually suspicious of random phone calls and visitors. I think that links nicely, Rob. It's about what you were talking about, those red flags and warnings of what an online scammer looks like. So knowing what red flags to look for in the context of an online scammer versus someone at your front door.
Yes, that's right, and that's a good analogy to make. But it's really important just to make sure that you don't lower your defenses online. Psychologically, people do. It's really weird, but it's true.
Any other questions before we wrap up? Don't think there's anything. No, brilliant. Well, that I think brings us to the end of that session. Thank you so much, Rob, for your input as ever. Thank you all for attending and for your participation. And we will make the recording available hopefully later today through the YouTube channel and on the Digital Champions page. So thank you all.
Great. Thanks very much. See you next time.